Welcome to Brightside Brews, where we serve up more than just coffee. We pour into your passion, your purpose, and your partnership. Whether you're building a business, growing in love, or chasing your dreams, we're here to fuel your journey with inspiration, real talk, and a little bit of
It was just two
caffeine.
lovers
So grab your favorite cup,
sitting in the
take
car,
a sip,
listening
and
to
let's brew
Blonde, falling
something
for each
amazing
other,
together.
thinking orange.
And the first thing that you told me was, "Are you doing this full time yet?" And I said, "No, I'm doing it part time." And you said, "Quit." Just like that, quit. Quit your full time job and do this, because until you do it, until you quit, you're not gonna grow.
Go be an actor. Like, make up a persona. Make it authentic, but make it joyful. But like, you got to be a person that's everything's exciting, everything's enthusiasm, because you have 30 seconds to wow someone.
Yeah.
I read people well, and I'm willing to take a guess. I'm willing to take a gamble on what I think I know about someone based on how they present themselves.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Brightside Brew Crew. We have an awesome guest with you today. His name is Corbin McCall from Night Owl Coffee. Hi, buddy.
Dallas, Texas. I just arrived. Good to see you, my friend.
Thank you for coming, buddy.
4-hour drive to see you. You should feel special.
Hey, I do feel special.
I came just for this and lavender matcha. Exactly.
Made by Mariah.
Made by
Profiled by
Yes, made by your fantastic Mariah.
Yeah.
So this is what episode?
This is episode 3.
Episode 3. Let's go.
Yeah, this is fun.
I've always dreamed to be on the 3rd episode of a podcast. And here we are.
Here we are. We're going to talk a little bit about how did we meet. Do you remember our first conversation, or when I messaged you on Instagram?
Oh, Instagram.
Yeah.
No, that was what, years ago?
There, a lot. 2020?
No, I don't.
2020 or
I don't.
2021. It was a while ago. It was many years ago. So I messaged.
What do you remember what that message said?
Yeah.
What did it say?
I said, we're in the same space and I'd love to have a conversation, pick your brain.
What did I say?
And you said, yeah, I'd love to. Whenever, or you gave me a time slot, and we got on a phone call. It was supposed to be an hour phone call. I think you said I only have 1 hour to spare, but we stayed talking for like almost 2 hours. And I was
probably just mesmerized by your gorgeous Ecuadorian accent.
I love how inspiring it was to hear how much were you willing to share, because you were an open book.
It was 2020. I was probably bored out of my mind.
No, you were pretty busy.
Oh yeah?
Yes, you were already growing. You were obviously not as big as you are right now, but it was big. You were going through baristas like no tomorrow, and you're going through a bunch of events.
Yeah, well, 2020. I mean, I guess depending on what month, that's a very different story, kind of in where we were. Summer, yeah, that would have been probably the peak of boredom. All corporate events had dried up by then. That would have been our 18, 19. That would have been kind of our third.
2021.
Okay, so if it was 2021, that would have been a pretty massive year where we grew a lot. We went from doing about 150 events to almost 500 in 2021. So as I kind of look back on 2021, that was, we had a lot of what would have been growth suppressed in 2020. So where we thought we were going from 2019 to 2020 to 2021, kind of, you had this happen, then you had that catch up to 2021. So yeah, we grew like 3 times from 2020 to 2021. That call, it sounds like it was right in the middle of that. And that was kind of, I think, when I first started to realize this was a business too. And you start to believe in yourself as an entrepreneur and as a leader. And, you kind of, I feel like, find yourself in that space, usually 3 to 4 years in, when you're saying, okay, I can do this. I can build a business. So it sounds like that's about when our conversation happened.
I think so. But you told me some things specifically to the business that jump-started us to get the growth that we definitely wanted to get. And the first thing that you told me was, are you doing this full time yet? And I said, no, I'm doing it part time. And you said, quit. Just like that, quit. Quit your full time job and do this, because until you do it, until you quit, you're not going to grow.
Yeah.
And I remember those words like haunting me, because I was afraid. Like every person that starts a job and does it part time, you have the security of that paycheck. You have the security of the insurance, 401k, all that crap. And leaving all that is terrifying.
Well, you did.
I did when I couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
I did when I was
Well,
already.
sometimes you let the demand make your decisions for you, right? Whether that's building, purchasing a new asset or building something new or leaving a job. And that's where I was facing. And now I was at probably a easier position because I knew for years what I was doing is not what I wanted to do. So when I finally had that, it was more of an escape when I was able to finally say, okay, I can actually financially pull this off to where this can be my career. It's different if you're doing something you enjoy or you like. Did you at the time enjoy your corporate job, or were you ready to
Oh, I
move
love
on?
it.
Yeah, so you're in a
Yeah.
more difficult situation because you had to decide to walk away from something that you didn't or that you did like, right?
True. I mean, I loved what I did operationally speaking, which was corporate accounting. It's not that hard. I like puzzles. So to me, it was fun to come that end of the month. I had to resolve a bunch of puzzles, and those are the challenges.
Yeah.
But then I became a manager, and then leading a team is completely different story, which I'm kind of doing right now, but in a whole different. You're not guided by the corporate nonsense. I'm creating the
So
corporate
what would you tell yourself, the JJ of 2025? What would you go back and tell yourself when you were making that decision?
quit.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Stop being scared.
Stop being scared and quit. Well, you're right, with the right demand, because a couple things happened for me to quit, which was not being able to keep up with the demand because I was already getting events during the week as well.
Well, when you have your corporate job, it's a nice amenity to be making a couple extra grand on the weekends here and there,
It
and
was fun.
it's easy. It's actually a really easy balance. And I tell a lot of people in consulting, if that's a balance that works for you, stay there. Because
It's a
once,
sweet balance.
yeah, if you enjoy that balance and your vision isn't to build your own empire or build your own, you're in a really good spot. You have very limited expenses at this point. You can afford to do it all. If you don't have kids, it's even easier. And but I think you'll make that decision based on kind of where you want to go. And it sounds like at that time you had bigger dreams than just being in a corporate job.
Yes, I didn't know how far. For me, it was a challenge. As I said, I like puzzle, but I also like challenges. So I wanted to see how much can I grow it. And you said many things when we first talked, but the advices were okay, quit and dedicate, because until you do, you won't grow. You also told me write down your plan, because if you don't, it's just an idea. It's not. Write down, put it in paper, and figure out a way to do it. And then you give me a very technical and advice dedicated to our specific area, which was do weddings. If you're not doing weddings, you're not going to get exposure. Because I didn't know. I thought that at that point I was doing a lot of farmers markets. They're like, no,
Hard
get out
pass.
of
Get out of there. Get out of there.
now. And I'm like, but I'm doing like $400 in each market.
Get out of there. Get out of there. Well, I've always said every wedding has, hopefully, unless you're going to homeless weddings, every wedding has 200 people with a job.
Mhm.
And you're able to make a slow impact. It's not, it's a deception to think that every wedding there's just a corporate client right on the other side, because there's not. But every 10 weddings there is, every 8 weddings there is, every 12 weddings there is. And so it shows in the beginning, it's about just that slow growth. And, it's really hard if you have $1,000 in the bank at 4% interest. It's really not exciting after that first interest payment to have $1,004. That's not very exciting. And but when you look 10 years down the road, it can be exciting to what's happened with that compound interest.
Yep.
And it's the same with building your business. It takes 10 or 15 weddings maybe to get one corporate client, but then that compounds and that compounds and that compounds. The next thing you know, you go from doing 20 events, 30 events, 100 to doing almost 1,000. And it feels like it happens pretty quick, right? So you're kind of in the middle of that journey right now.
Right in the middle. Right in the middle. It's funny how looking back to those words, to those advices, and once those were applied properly, it just happened.
Well, it was all things that I had already been through, and I had I'd quit my job in 2020. I mean, the day I tell everyone I left was January 1st, 2020. It wasn't a cut and throat walk away from my corporate job, but it was a phase out. But I always just pick a date. It's easier to tell a story. So January 1st, 2020 was when I stepped away from my job, and then every piece of advice you had, I had already made that decision. So I'd kind of already paved that route. I knew the impact weddings would have on building your confidence and being great at what you do, but also building your network, right? Because building your network in the event industry is actually critical to be in the wedding space.
That's huge.
So you build your network. You don't build your network in the corporate space. You build your network in the wedding space. And so a lot of the foundational relationships came from that time that I spent, out in the middle of nowhere from 4 p.m. to 2 a.m. every Saturday, every Friday, every Sunday. So, you put in the work, and then over time, like looking back now, my closest friends in the industry, my mentors come from the fact that I was operating in that wedding space. And then over time, you pull back and you're like, that's not where I want to be. And you eventually price yourself out a little bit of the wedding space. But we still do a fair amount of weddings. We don't advertise like we used to in the wedding space. And we're having those conversations actively as of like literally last week about whether we should be kind of remarketing back into the wedding space. But like every business, you go through cycles, of, wow, we're getting really hot on the corporate side, or we're doing a lot of this kind of stuff or a lot of this kind of stuff. So
It's
yeah.
funny how it, like, business life takes you to corners, or it just
Yeah, but we're 8 years in now, and so it's like every year feels like has a new theme. This year we moved into our new office, so
Beautiful.
getting our kind of headquarters where I want it and where I want it for the next 4 to 5 years has been my goal this year. And so spending the time on wedding marketing is kind of, and things like that has taken kind of a back seat. What are you working on this year? What's the focus for you?
Well, I have a sales goal, and I think we got where I wanted to get with this place, with this warehouse. I'm gonna see how can we max out, basically maxing out.
Yeah.
See how many events can we do the most without breaking.
What's that number?
7 so far.
7 in the same day. So that's the most you've done to date. Well, the fun thing about what we do is like the number's always growing. Then once you do 7 doesn't feel daunting anymore.
Exactly.
I remember years back, this is dating back to when we started. I'd be driving around Dallas and I would just say to myself, I'd see all the buildings, and Dallas relatively isn't a huge downtown either. And I would just say, there's no reason we shouldn't have 10 coffee carts going right now. Like, just look at the real estate. Building. And this is just Dallas. Then you have all the suburbs of Dallas, which have their own downtowns. But I just remember thinking that, and then it sounds like a lot. And then you get there, and then this year we had 15 going in one day. And so you just kind of, 7 feels big, and then 9 feels big, and then 11 feels big. And it's just, it's you just keep growing and you keep growing, you keep growing.
The max out. So
yeah, and you stretch yourself, and your operations change, and then in trying to make that many events happen, you start to reach out to more staff members, and so you're building your staff as you go, and you have to buy new equipment, so you're building your assets as you go, and so then you're sitting there saying, okay, well, now next time 7 comes around, it'll be cake. We know the recipe. It's no different than going from baking 12 cookies to baking 24. And then next thing, okay, well, I need another oven. I'll put my oven in the garage, and now I can bake 48. And it's just the constant growth of figuring out how to do a little bit more each time.
Going back to your willingness to share your knowledge with other business owners or other coffee cart business owners, I respect that, appreciate that so much, because it did change my business. My business is where it is right now because a lot of the hard work that we do, but of awesome people like you, like TJ from Northern Vessel.
Yeah, are y'all buddies?
Yeah, I bought their cart. Remember?
Oh no, I didn't know
when
that.
He was closing out, and I'm so glad that he got back into business, and now he's doing fantastic.
Yeah.
So you guys were able to put that little seed of knowledge.
He's a great storyteller. It's funny, you can see from social what people's strengths and weaknesses are.
Really?
I can. But I read people well.
Yeah.
I read people well, and I'm willing to take a guess. I'm willing to take a gamble on what I think I know about someone based on how they present themselves. So a lot of people I've never met, but I feel like I can tell you exactly who they are, what their weaknesses and strengths are. Yeah, based on what they value. You can only hold a facade for so long.
Okay.
You can only hold a facade for so long, but you can see the artistry in a guy like that. He loves storytelling. He's very process driven. He's someone who you can tell that for things to be perfect. And usually someone like that will move a little slower versus, so you can start to read people a little bit, but I've always thought he's an amazing storyteller. I've always liked watching his content.
It's awesome content.
Yeah.
But going back to you've been a mentor, not just for me, for a lot of other coffee cart company owners. How did you get to that position, do you think? By being the best? By being the pioneer?
Being the best is an interesting thought, because I think there's a part of everyone that should think that they're the best in a way, but I also think there should be a humility and a curiosity and a hunger to grow that balances that out, right? So do I think I'm the best at certain things? I do. Does that mean I think we're the best and we don't have a place to operate in humility and constant ambition to strive for greater things? We also have that. I think my strength is understanding everything we do from the hospitality lens. But there's people who are better at a lot of different things than me. There will be people who have better coffee knowledge than I do. There will be people who have better operations minds than I do. I have a really good balance of all of it. I've always seen everything through the event lens very clearly. Some people are born with 20/20 vision. I'm not. Got my contacts in right now. I'll touch them. I have terrible vision. But from the event perspective, I've always had very clear vision on what this business needs to be in relativity to the corporate space, the conference space, the wedding space.
Okay.
And there's constantly still things that I'm always want to be better in our business. There's gaps we have. There's things that can always be better. But I had great mentors. And so I grew up in a neighborhood where I was the youngest kid in the neighborhood by 4 or 5 years. So I grew up, and as we look at each other and judge each other and even favor each other and speak highly of each other as entrepreneurs, it's funny because we're often missing all the information we need to know to actually know where someone came from. So where I come from is a background of being a kid in a neighborhood who hung out with kids that were 5, 6, 7 years older. So it was always very comfortable for me to be around older people. So I didn't really, to this day, most of my friends are 4, 5, 6 years older. I flock to older people because that's how I grew up. So when I come into the industry, it was very natural for me to go hang out with all the people that had already been doing this 10 years. For me, mentorship wasn't really a formal, hey, will you be my mentor? It was me just hanging around guys that are already 7 years, 8 years into their business. So I got to see things through a different lens, and I got to put myself around successful people, and not for the sake of putting myself around successful people, just for the sake that they were 7, 10 years ahead of me in business. And so when you put yourself around those kind of people versus people who are just getting started, there's a whole level of knowledge and access of information that's not available if you're not around people like that. I have 3 kind of mentors. I would say a lot more people I respect, but I have 3 specific mentors in our space. And one of them owns a great catering business who's been around for 15 years. Another one's been around the same amount of time in the bartending space, and another one in the tent and event rental space. And so I've had those guys pour into me, and I didn't do anything to deserve it. And so it's very easy, going back to your question, for me to do that for other people. My wife, on the other hand, hates when I share trade secrets. And it's funny because there's nothing we do when I tell people kind of the recipe for success. There's nothing really that's IP regarding that information.
It's not rocket science.
It's not, but I feel like I'll tell someone, I can tell you what to do, but you can't be me.
Yeah.
You can't. Like, there's a level of charisma and swagger and confidence you have to carry yourself in doing what we do to achieve the volume that we do it at.
And let's face it, it's a lot of hard work.
It is, but it takes grit, and it takes a level of, people from the outside see what we do as a coffee job, but there's a level of it that's the modeling. There's just as much of modeling and acting as there is in anything.
True.
There's the visual aesthetic side of how we present ourselves. There's no one who doesn't do what we do will ever know what it's like to have to act joyful to serve some of the most obnoxious humans alive every day. There's a level of acting that you have to get into your role. I was talking with one of my guys this week about half of this job is acting. You've got to be a great actor, and you actually have to have a different persona. And I said, I don't want you lying to people, but build your story of who you are
Okay.
like you're going to be an actor. So I said, if you have a summer vacation that you dreamed of going to Malta this summer, tell that story while you're behind the bar. Go be an actor. Like, make up a persona. Make it authentic, but make it joyful. But like, you got to be a person that's everything's exciting, everything's enthusiasm, because you have 30 seconds to wow someone. So yeah, there's a lot of components that takes to be successful doing what we do. And I think grit's number one. And I think just being determined and being, I'm hungry to always be growing.
I see that.
Always be growing, always what can be better. And that's always, I look around this room and I'm just like, that base molding could have been cut different. If it was my room, I would have cut it different. I would have 45'd it versus I'm just always seeing everything we do like that.
But that's what makes Night Owl the business that it is, because you are very narrowed into the aesthetics of how do you want things to look. It's very important. It's very important for people in our industry, because we're, as you said, people see us as coffee companies, and we're not. And you said this in a call. We're not a coffee business. We're a hospitality. We're an events. We're an entertainment.
Right.
And it's a lot of customer service, a lot of very like, and you did mention you're rather hiring people with great hospitality, and you can teach them the coffee stuff rather than have a person with coffee skills and not hospitality skills.
Yeah,
there's a lot of that
for sure.
There's a lot of that in the world, or in coffee itself, in the industry. So finding that the right folks to be behind bar, and I think that part of that acting that you mentioned is customer service. It's being able to wow someone, and that's in hospitality.
Right. Well, we get in our space of serving events, you get a very small window to impress someone, and people are going to be way more impressed by a personality that's joyful than they are a barista who's very scientific about their approach with coffee. Right. And very few of the palates we actually serve really have the ability to taste the difference from a coffee that's maybe a 9 versus a coffee that's a 7. Right. And so there's that. Especially if it's a vanilla latte extra sweet. So like, ideally, do you want your barista to be perfect in every category? Of course. But I'll always take the person who can make someone smile more than the person who can pour a 4-layer rosetta in their latte art and extract a perfect espresso. Now, I can teach those things a lot easier than I can teach you to be charming and be very conscious and attentive of the way you present yourself at an event.
Yep.
And so yeah, it's just like, it just goes back to like the artistry of what's the most important. The most important thing is how we make someone feel. And again, we serve people that most commonly go to Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks. And so
the bar is low.
So the bar is extremely low. And there's times where you could, as a talented barista, intentionally make a bad coffee if you wanted to, and the person would say that's the best coffee I've ever had.
True.
Right. So, but when you can start caring about both and see everything from kind of the perspective of great service and great coffee quality, great acting and personality, and then also be attentive to the way all your equipment and your bars present, and then you just as a team of trained great hospitality, you begin to build something really special. And then I have 5 fingers and I only touch 4 of them. So the final one I might point out to be the relationships you have in the industry, and building brand ambassadors and building relationships that become your resellers, right? Because most of our resellers are our clients who are now telling their clients and are now, plugging us into other places. And so you kind of grow organically through your relationships.
Yeah. And you talk about that, almost making it sound that your coffee is average. Your coffee is bad. I love it. I had the opportunity to play coffee with you, and that was such fun hang. And
well, yeah, but it's all so like average for Steph Curry is great for me. Right. Like, so when someone's great at what they do, they're going to talk about the greatest basketball player in the world, or the greatest football player in the world. For Saquon Barkley to run a 4.740 is very, very poor performance. For me, that would be the greatest run of my life. So the same way I talk about coffee, I don't know if you even catch that reference. I don't know if you're a football guy, but if I say an average performance with coffee or an average cup of coffee, that could be the greatest cup of coffee someone else has ever had. But, but for my standard, hey, we could have done better. But we also know that even though we could have done better, that still was a great cup of coffee to that person. And we're willing to take that bet if it's the right person behind the bar who's making people feel cared for, loved, who's hospitable, who's making the client feel like, wow, that guy was awesome. Because I've gotten way more compliments from our team for picking up trash, for holding the doors, for, hey, your guy was so professional. You get way more compliments for that than, wow, your guy's espresso was on point. You won't get clients complimenting that because that's not what matters. So we're in the business of hospitality and service. And so I always think it's very important to be cognizant of the other vendors in the room. And if they drop trash, pick it up, hold the door for them. See if they, that. So going beyond your service isn't just coffee. It's event enhancement. And so you have a role beyond just serving coffee. The most important thing post event is cleaning your floors. There's the idea of it's coffee. Someone will clean it up. Yeah, but leave it better than you found it. Right. Because why would that? Someone wants to work with someone who sees the world through that lens.
That is funny. I had to go back to a venue because my barista didn't clean it.
And it's a waste of your time, and it's a waste of So, but it's and once you get addicted to that idea of, everything I do, I want to leave it better, and that builds that idea that I'm the best, right? Because everything I do, one of the things our team would joke about it behind my back. But I take the most pride in tape lines. When I gaff down tape, I actually for a while started developing content to have a gaff tape Instagram account. Because I would, if I was so ahead of schedule, I would do some crazy shape, and I'd use my X-Acto blade to do a perfect cut, and I would just make shapes. I had fun with it because the gaff tape line coming around the wall and around a rounded staircase was equally as important to me as the latte art, because our client might not ever drink coffee, but she's sure as heck going to see how sloppy a tape job may or may not be for 4 or 5 hours. So how balanced can you view every detail? Everything matters.
I love that. What is the goal for Night Owl for this year?
I don't know, man. I just came down to drink some coffee with you and ask some hard questions. The goal was moving into a new facility to get that facility where we want it to move just over the next 2 years. We'll be there for another 4.5 years. So just getting it to a place, I think, where it's going to be a proud home for us to, build our team moving forward, a place where we can continue to grow. We've got the space to do it. Yeah. Right now, the last time you were there, we built out the front kitchen and the cafe since. And so just getting that, it's probably going to take 3 to 4 more months. And then just, I think every year you're just kind of rediscovering who you are and where you fit in the marketplace. And, we're traveling more than ever. And so just figuring that out, we're looking at some other markets and just, it's easy to dream, but then you slow down and you step away from the high and you say, okay, but do I actually want to do that? Do I actually want, you're sitting here with your first kind of podcast, you have the dream of building it and you're saying, okay, do I actually want to do that? And that's the hardest part, is taking that step, right? Because you probably thought about it for a year or 2 years, and then you finally just have to do it. So we're having that thought process right now around other markets, and then, or do we just right now just continue to do what we do? I think there's seasons where you just do what you do.
Yep.
And you just continue to go, and you're patient and you're waiting for that opportunity. And there's times to, pounce on an opportunity and to grow.
It takes. I remember we had a conversation about a year and a half or 2 years ago when I met you at your other warehouse.
Yeah.
And you told me the vision of this warehouse, and you told me we went to check some warehouses. I remember.
Oh, you went shopping with me?
I was shopping.
Let's go.
That was funny. And you told me the vision. I want to have a gym, so I want space for a gym. I want showers.
Oh, boom. Let's go. It's a full contact sport doing what we do, And that's why I tell our team, you got to take care of your body. You got to take care of your, your faith, your beliefs, your family. It's like all that stuff has to come in order for the business to be fun, in order for you to be a great leader.
I love
and so it's like, like things like the gym, that wasn't just like a vain, I was like, no, I want more time with my kids. I want more time with my family. I don't want to waste time going from here to there. And so I'm going to just build it in my freaking office. And I don't have an excuse anymore. We did. The first thing I built. We said we didn't have we had concrete was all we had. And I built a gym, luxury, everything. The best. That was the first thing I built. And so I was like, no excuse. So I'm just trying to take that viewpoint with everything we do. So now it's, the warehouse racks, and then everything we need in the warehouse. And then now it's building up the cafe so that we can, do actually events in that cafe space and more just marketing and networking kind of stuff. But I don't know. I think it's the goal this year. I haven't probably really defined it, but it's just really wrapping up some of those projects in the warehouse. And I think kind of building the foundation of who I want us to be for the next 5 years, which is a brand that can kind of continue to do cool things that are outside the traditional silo of what everyone expects you to do. Everyone expects us. We do coffee carts. But no, I want to be a leader in the event space. I want to be able to host event planners. I want to be able to host events. I want to be able to let independent photographers know that our space is open to them to work.
Oh, nice.
Like, right, I want to be kind of a beacon of light, for lack of better terms, to the independents out there that were once where we were. And so,
that is
just
amazing for the industry.
Well, just positioning ourselves to say, like, it's, our growth is such a story of planners and event designers and venues trusting us and reselling us or referring us and recommending us or adding us to the preferred vendor list, or, it's such a team effort. And sure, we put in the work and we've done the right thing and it's made as few of mistakes as possible at the time. But yeah, it's a group effort. And so you never know who the next big event planner or photographer that's going to give you one referral that changes your business is. And so just, doing the right thing, and not even doing the right thing, but doing the fun thing. It's fun helping people out. And it is, and especially when you have a place and you can, staff someone on a Friday to run a free coffee shop.
That's fun.
It's just, that's something that's unexpected. So we want to do unexpected things. Let's go.
I think we're in a good time. As always, this podcast is sponsored by the Golden Hour Coffee Blend from Brightside Coffee. So make sure you get your back. Thank you, buddy.
Boom.